I'm going to start with the sponsors, and hopefully the other guys will be getting on this
I
morning.
hope so.
Either that or you and I will have a private shiur, huh?
All right.
Okay. Year of Learning by Dr. Paul Koningsberg in memory of his brother, Dr. Sam Koningsberg, Shimon Reuven ben Labish, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nisan Hara Nisan ben Fardosa. Paul and Bob Bromberg in memory of their dear friend Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. Malka Mann in memory of her family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. The many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi, friends of Toby Paris, Sarah Tova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, Cheryl Sher, her children and grandchildren, in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Harav Akiva, Marcia Federbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Oriel Paul Federbush, Oriel ben Harav Shimon. Month of Learning by Charlie Gelfenstein, in memory of his mother, Dacia Gil Bas Meir Halevi, and his father, Meir ben Yaakov. Gila and Harold Saltzman, in memory of her mother, Eti bat Yitzchak Elchanan. Chaim and Phyllis Reese, in memory of his father, Mordechai ben Yom Tov Lipa. Phyllis and Chaim Reese, in memory of her father, Pinchas ben Avraham. A Week of Learning by Lala and Siggy Bessler, in memory of her father, Mordechai ben Yisrael Yitzchak. By Ron and Susan Podolsky, in memory of his mother, Fredel Bashraga Feivel. Also, that is actually it for today. The rest move into December. So, Shemas Havin Aliyah, Krank Rafia, Velti Yeshua Shema Taliyah, and Lachol B'nai Yisrael, a good gebenched Yar. Okay, welcome to those who just joined on. Okay, we are on Vav Amud Aleph. We were discussing the example of when is a Jew considered to be responsible in terms of being chayev, on being over on lo yimatzeh, and regarding having chometz in his possession. And the Gemara gave the example with a story of troops in Mechoza that brought grain with them, stored it in the homes of the various people, Jews in particular as well, and that would they be considered transgressing Bal Yimatzeh, okay, in that situation, okay? And the Gemara seemed to imply that since they did not take achrayus, they did not take any responsibility, okay, then they would not be held being over. Just the opposite, if they did have some responsibility. And the Gemara ended with that discussion, suggesting that if they had to pay back the troops for whatever grain was stolen or grain that was lost, the implication is that they did have then a sense of responsibility and could be theoretically then at least over transgressing Bal Yimatzeh. Now the Gemara wants to pick up and try to suggest, is there other parallels that we can see in that situation, okay, that we could apply to that kind of a case, okay? And that's where we are now, starting on Vav Amud Aleph, about 4 lines down from the top of the Amud, okay? Ba'u minei mi Rava. So they therefore came and asked Rava the following question. Behemat arnona, if you have an animal that normally you would be chayav to bring this animal as a korban for a firstborn, bechor. But this animal is part of a herd for which one has to pay a royal tax. Okay? Therefore, it's considered not totally owned by the Jew, but owned in shituf, if you will, shared with the royal authorities. That would seem to imply that the animal would not be required to be brought as or put aside as a bechor. So the question that they're asking him, this kind of animal, chayevet bebechora, or ein chayevet bebechora, is it one, the Jew, still obligated in the laws of firstborn, or not obligated in such? And the Gemara continues, kol hecha dematze mesalek le bezuze, in a situation where we can find that the Jewish owner can, let's say, pay the tax with money rather than with the animal, okay? In that case, right? Lo kamen be'ayechad lan dechayev. We do not then find that the person, okay, would be over, and therefore, okay, it still would be chayev in the mitzvah, okay? Kika mebayela, okay, and so therefore, when we see that they're in the possession of it, hecha de lo matze mesalek le bezuze. It's where the Jewish owner cannot pay off the royal tax collector with money. Mai, what's the situation? Amar laho, he said to them, Petura, then the Jewish owner would be exempt. Vahatanya chayevet, says the Gemara. But haven't we learned elsewhere in a Braita that the person is still liable, still obligated? Hatam dematze misalekle. Okay, there we said that only applied of whether or not the person is able to, again, pay the king, the royal authority, the tax collector, the money. Okay? If he can, that way, by paying the money, the Gentile, the king or the whatever, the royal doesn't have any claim on the animal, okay? And in that case, we would say if that's when he is subject to the law of Bechor. Ika de Amri, and there are those who presented this situation in a different manner. They said, Amar Rava, says Rava, Behemat Arnona, Ptura mina Bechora, that an animal that is part of the royal tax is exempt from firstborn status. The afal gav de matze mesalekle. Okay, and even that's even a situation where he can pay off the tax collector or the king, okay, with money. Aset arnona, however, dough that is subject to the royal tax, okay, in other words, subject to Gentile authority, chayevet bechala, is still nevertheless obligated in the mitzvah of chala. Va'afal gav de lo matze mesalekle, even though, right, we find that he cannot, okay, pay off the Gentile with money. Ma'itama, what's the reasoning? Behema itla kola, esa litle kola. The animal, in this case, has public when it's born, there's public knowledge, there's a voice, right? There's publicity, okay? When there's dough, there is no publicity, okay? Now, that's a slightly complicated explanation. Rashi, Tosafot differ. However, in essence, what happens, in other words, when somebody gives birth to an animal, okay, the neighbors know, the king or the tax collector will know. Okay? Whether somebody separates challah from his dough, nobody knows for sure. Okay? They don't check inside their house. Okay? So that's the point that the Gemara is trying to suggest here. Okay. Tanu Rabbanon, a new Braita, is going to teach us the following. Nochri shenichnas lechatzero shel Yisrael. Okay? We're still dealing with the question of Bal Yamatzeh, if one would be over on it, in this case, with a Gentile bringing leaven into the courtyard. Ubitzeko biyado. And not only that, but the Gentile is carrying the dough in his hand. Ein zakuk leva'er, says the Braita. The Jew is not obligated to destroy, to dispose of this dough. Hifkido etzlo, says the Gemara. But what happens if we see in this case, right, that he actually deposited the dough, right, in this situation? Okay? Zakuk leva'er. The Jew is responsible then to remove, to destroy this dough. Okay? What's the situation? Yiched lo bayit. Okay? If the Jew, however, had set a designated area in the house, okay, or in a shed or something for the Gentile, ein zakuk leva'er. The Jew is not responsible for destroying that leaven. Shnei lo yimatzeh. Why? Because it says it shall not be found. Mai ka'amar, what is it telling us? Amar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa, areishakai. It's talking about the beginning of the Braita. Okay, the earlier case. Vahachi ka'amar. And this is what it means to tell us. Hifkido etzlo. If the Gentile deposited the dough along with the Jew, okay? Zakuk leva'er. Therefore, the Jew is responsible to remove it. Shene'amar lo yimatzeh. Because it says it shall not be found in your homes, remember. Okay? Rav Ashi Amar. Says Rav Ashi. La'olam asefakai. Now, says Rav Ashi, it's dealing with the latter part of the Braita. Okay? Vahachi ka'amar. This is what it is referring to. Yiched lo bayit. If the Jew set aside in his house a room or a section, okay, that was specifically for the Gentile, ein zakuk leva'er. He has no necessity to destroy it, to remove it. Shnei amar, because the pasuk says, lo yimatzeh bevatechem, that it shall not be found in your home. Vaha lavdidehu. But that area that's been set aside for the Gentile is not the Jews. It's not his. Dinachri ki kama'ayel, because the Gentile, when he brings in this dough, leveta denafshe kama'ayel. It's like he's bringing it into his own house. And that's what the situation is. Lamemra, does that mean to tell us, says the Gemara, Deschirut Kanya, that renting a location is similar to purchase? Vahatnan, but aren't we taught elsewhere in a Mishnah? Af b'makom she'amru lahaskir, even in a place where they said to rent, okay, lo lebayit dira amru. They generally said that that was not for the purpose of habitation for the Gentile. Okay? Mipnei shemachnisin letocho avodat galilim. Because the Gentile will enter into that place idol worship. Generally, were not encouraged there in Babylonia, particularly, to rent space to Gentiles. Ve'isanka da'atach, and if you want to say to schirut kanya, that renting is like purchasing, ki kama ayel, when he brings it in, levete denavshe ka'ayel, that therefore it's like bringing it into his own house. Shani hacha, but it's different here, says the Gemara. Why? Da'afke rachmana bilashon lo yimatzeh, because Hashem expressed himself, I'm going to say, in the Torah with particular language of, excuse me, of lo yimatzeh, excuse me, that it should not be found. Mi shematsui biyadecha, that it's found within your, okay, let's say hand, within your possessions, okay? Yatzazeh she'eno matsui biyadecha. And therefore, right, it excludes that, okay, that is not found, so to speak, in your hand, this chametz, right? Okay, look, by the way, at note 19 on 682 in Art Scroll. Okay, so that, and it says, note that this could be, more than one explanation here in terms of this lo yimatze. Okay, all right, going on then. Amar Rav Yehuda, says Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav. Okay, the following. Hamotzi chametz bebeito biyom tov. What happens if one finds chametz in their home on Yontif itself? Right?
Complex.
So we're going to a, so to speak, a new situation here. Excuse me. Kofe alav etakeli. One takes a pot, a vessel, turning it over
it.
Right? And covers that chametz. Right? Amar Rava, says Rava. Im shel hekdesh hu eino tzarich. Rava qualifies it and says, if this property, if this chametz actually belonged to hekdesh, to truma, let's say, okay, it's not necessary to cover it.
Which that is.
Ask what? Question? Okay. We might ask why, which is what the Gemara then says to us. My tama, what's the reasoning that he doesn't have to cover it? Mivdal bedili mine, because people tend to separate themselves from hekdesh, so they won't eat it. That's the point. So in other words, naturally they know that not to indulge in that that particular chametz. However, the Gemara wants to continue. Va'amar Rav Yehuda Amara. He says, Chemtzo shel nachri oselo mechitza asarat fachim mishum heker. He argues and says that if one finds Gentile chametz, leaven there, he should make some sort of a separation of at least 10 tfachim. Why? Because that's going to make it a separate rishus, remember, in order as a shum heker, as a sign of remembrance, right? To make himself, to make it separate, right? Remind him not to eat it. V'im shel hekdesh, and if it belongs to hekdesh, eino tzorich, then he doesn't need it to make the separation. My tama, what's the reason? Again, mavdil bedile in shemine. Okay, then again, we see people are used to the idea of separating themselves from hekdesh and not eating it. Now, another example, new situation. Va'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Let's say the following new situation. hamifafresh, one who sets sail, okay, on a ship. V'hayotze b'shayara, or one who goes on a caravan, okay, he leaves the area on a caravan. Kodem shloshim yom, before 30 days prior to Pesach. Ein zakuk leva'er, one does not have to dispose of his chametz. Toch shloshim yom, within 30 days, zakuk leva'er, he is required to dispose of his chametz. Further, Amar Abaye, says Abaye, Hada Amart, fact that you said Toch Shloshim Yom Zakuk Leva'er, that within 30 days he has an obligation to dispose of it. Lo Amran Ele Shada'ato Lachzor. According to Abaye, that's only if his intention is to return back before Pesach. Aval Ein Da'ato Lachzor. But if his intent is not to return, Ein Zakuk Leva'er, he has no necessity, no obligation to dispose of it. Amar le Rava, however, Rava challenges him and questions. Ve'i da'ato lachzor, afilu me Rosh Hashanah nami, and if his intent, okay, is to return, okay, even if he left from Rosh Hashanah time, okay, also, Ela Amar Rava, Rava, however, says, with a different elaboration, Hada Amrat Kodim Shloshim Yom, the fact that you said before 30 days, Ein Zakuk Leva'er, that he does not have to dispose of it. Lo Amran Ela She'ein Da'ato Lachzor. That implies that he has no intent to return. Okay? Aval Da'ato Lachzor. But if his intent is to return, says Rava, right? Afilu mi Rosh Hashanah, even if it's from the time that he left of Rosh Hashanah time, okay? What happens? That's, remember, a long time. We're talking, right? Fall into spring, okay? Afilu mi Rosh Hashanah, zakuk leva'er. He is obligated to remove it. Va'azda Rabba ta'ame. And Rabba basically was consistent with his own reasoning. Da'amar Rabba, as he says, ha'oseh beito otsar, hodem shloshim yom, one who makes his house into a kind of storehouse, okay? In other words, he fills his house with all sorts of produce, and in doing so, that produce is now on top of the chametz, okay? What happens? B'kodem shloshim yom, before 30 days, ein zakuk leva'er. He does not have to, excuse me, dispose of the chametz because the other produce has covered it, and therefore he would not be over on lo yimatzeh or lo yira'eh. Okay? Toch shloshim yom. But if it's within 30 days, zakuk leva'er, he is obligated to dispose of it. V'kodem shloshim nami lo amran. And even before the 30 days, also they didn't say this. Ela she'ein da'ato lifnoto. That's where his intent is not to remove any of it, okay? Not to clean it out, so to speak. Aval da'ato lifnato. But if his intent is to clear it away, okay? In other words, the stored grain, whatever it is, okay? Afilu kodem shloshim yom nami zakuk leva'er. Then even before 30 days, he also is obligated to remove it. So the Gemara now picks up. Hani shloshim yom, these 30 days, maya vidataihu. Okay, what is his purpose? What is his intent, so to speak, right? Why specifically 30 days? Keditanya, as taught in the Breita, Shoalin v'dorshin behilchot HaPesach, kodem HaPesach shloshim yom, that one asks and darshans the laws of Pesach 30 days prior to the 30 days before the holiday. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, he says, Shtei Shabbatot, 2 weeks before the holiday is sufficient. Ma'itama the Tanakama. So what's the reasoning of the Tanakama of the Breita? That he says that it has to be a whole month as we go over to the next Amud, right? Shaharei Moshe Omed b'Pesach Rishon, because Moses was standing on the first of the occasion for the Pesach offering, okay? Umazhir al ha-Pesach sheni, and he was warning the people that those who couldn't observe the first Pesach would have to observe the second Pesach, and we know chronologically that's 1 month, 30 days later. Shenamah, as it said in the pasuk, V'yasu b'nei Yisrael et ha-Pesach b'mo'ado, that they should observe the holiday, the Paschal offering, on its appointed time, namely, that is the first month. Uktiv vayhi anashim asher hayu tmeim lenefesh adam. And afterwards it's written that there were people who were impure, ritually impure. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Omer, Amar lach, and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel would say to you, Aidi the Ire b'mile de Pischa. No, he was talking more in general about the matters of Pesach, okay, and not a specific time frame. Masik laho l'kol mile de Pischa. Okay, all the various matters and issues of Pesach. Ma'itama the Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So what then is the rationale that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says it's only 2 weeks? Shaharei Moshe Omed B'Rosh HaChodesh, that Moshe actually was giving this remarks on Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month of Nisan. Okay? Umazhir al HaPesach, and he was warning, encouraging them about the Korban Pesach. Shneamar, as it was, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodeshim, that this month, which certainly could have been Rosh Chodesh Nisan, right? This month, right? Rosh Chodeshim is the first months. Notice it's the beginning of the cycle of the year, of the series of months. Uktiv, and then it's written, Dibru el kol adat Yisrael lemor, say to all of the nation, right? This is what you should tell them. Speak to the entire assembly, right? Dibru el kol adat Yisrael lemor, be'esor lachodesh hazeh, on the 10th of this month, vaychulahem ish sela beit avot v'gomer. That therefore, on 10th of this month, you take themselves, each person, a lamb for his father's house. Mimai de beresh yarcha kai. How do we know, asks the Gemara, that could have been stated, I'm going to say, as of Rosh Chodesh? Dilma ba'arba'ah biyarcha. Maybe he told it to them on the 4th day of the month. Or b'chamsha biyarcha kai, or it was on the 5th day of the month that he said it to them. Ela amar Rabba bar Shimi mishmei de Rabina, but rather Rabba bar Shimi in the name of Ravina says mehacha. We know it from here, another pasuk, namely Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe. Hold on. Okay. Just had to make sure the cleaning ladies could get in. Okay? Okay. All right, everybody. So, know it from here. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe b'midbar Sinai b'shana hasheni b'chodesh harishon. Okay? So if it's the chodesh harishon and we have an earlier pasuk that says this is the first month, ukativ, and then afterwards, vayasu b'nei Yisrael et ha-pesach b'moado. Okay? So in other words, that they did it in its appropriate time. Okay? Namely, that would imply that they did it, right, on the 14th, and the 14th would be 2 weeks later from Rosh Chodesh. That's why Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel holds by 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
Okay? All right. We continue. Hacha. Nami here too. Mimai de Beresh Yarchakai. Again, furthermore, how do we know that it was the first of the month, right? Rosh Chodesh. Dilma ba'arba'a b'yarcha. Or b'chamisha b'yarcha. Again, maybe it was on the 4th of the month. Or maybe it was in the 5th of the month. Kai. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak now is going to give us another explanation, right? Atya midbar mimidbar. Okay, he says it's going to come by means of a gzera shava. Okay, use of common language. Okay, how do we know that? Ktiv hacha, in one pasuk it's written here, b'midbar Sinai, in the wilderness of Sinai. Ktiv hatam, and it's written elsewhere there, by Daber Hashem el Moshe, b'midbar Sinai, ba'ohel moed, Chodesh Hasheni. Namely, ma lahalen b'rosh Chodesh, afkan b'rosh Chodesh. So, in other words, he's using that example of Gzera Shava, with common words, to give the common example on Rosh Chodesh. So the Gemara asks a very logical question, okay? A slight digression to examine the psukim, but still logical. V'nichtov b'reisha dechodesh rishon. So why didn't the Torah then simply write the first day of that month, of the first month? V'hadar nichtov dechodesh hasheni, and then afterwards write about the second month. Amar Rav Menashe bar Tachlifa Mishmei de Rav. So he says as follows: Zot Omer Dam Umuchar b'Torah. That seems to tell us then that we have this concept that there really is no chronology per se in the Torah. Okay? That the Torah is not written in chronological order. Now, this is the digression that we see here. Amar Rav Papa. This is Rav Papa. Lo amran ela betrei inyane. Okay? We only apply that concept if we're dealing with two different matters, okay? Or two different topics or different passages. Aval bechad inyana, okay? But if we're talking about a single passage, a single item, a single topic, mai de mukdam, mukdam, umai de meuchar, meuchar. What's earlier is earlier, and what's later is later. De'ilo tema hachi, because if you don't say so, klal uprat, when we have one of the hermeneutical principles, right, which says klal uprat, namely, we have a generalization followed by a specific item. And we learn that to say, klal uprat, ein beklal ela ma shebeprat. Namely, in that situation, the generalization is limited by the specialization that follows it. If that's the situation, Dilma pratu klahu, maybe it should be then considered the opposite, right? More a situation of a limit, specialization, and then followed by a generalization, okay, which will get us the entirely opposite result. Vatu, and furthermore, says the Gemara, right? What happens? Prat uklal. In that case, then if we had prat uklal, okay, a detail followed by generalization, ne'aseh klal mosif al haprat. That then is going to result in the generalization adding to what was defined in the detail. Dilma klal upratu. Maybe then that should have been a generalization followed by the detail. Ihachi. If that's the case, afilu betray inyane nami. Even then, perhaps when we're dealing with two different passages or two different topics, we may have to say that the idea of ein mukdam umulchar b'Torah may be limited. Now, hanechelaman da'amar klal uprat hamirchakin zemiz. We may still apply ein mukdam umulchar l'Torah in a situation where we have a klal uprat that are separated, let's say, one from another. Okay? Ein danino to beklal uprat, that we do not then utilize, I'll say, okay, the hermeneutical principle of klal uprat, shapir. That seems right. Elelaman da'amar danim, but the one who says we could still use klal uprat in a situation where they are somewhat separate from one another, mai ikalamema. What do you have to say there? Afilu laman da'amar danim, even according to the one who says we can utilize it. Hanimili bichad inyana. We say this only in regards to one passage, one matter, one topic. Same topic. Ava betray inyane. But with two topics, two passages, two separate sections, ein danim, we would not do so. Okay. We now finish that digression, and we're now going to come back, okay, to our main topic again of dealing with the chametz, right? Now, having talked about chametz where the Gentile had some ownership or brought it into your possession, okay? What is the Gemara going to deal with next? Okay, it's going to deal with the issue of, just as we have normally today, okay, when you search your chametz, what do you have to do afterwards? Do the bitul. You have to do the nullification. And so now we continue with this. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, a new topic, right? Habodek tzrich sheyivatel, the one who does the search, right, says must immediately nullify. My tama, what's the reasoning? Inema mishum perurim halo chashivi. If you're saying about he only covers crumbs, okay, what difference does it make? They're not significant, right? right? They're not, we say it's like dust of the earth. So the crumbs would be like dust, right? V'chitema, and if you want to say, kevan de mintar laho, agav bete, that he might guard it, protect it, okay, along with his other items in his house, chashive, then that chometz is considered significant, important. Vahatanya, and aren't we taught then in a Braita, Sofei te'enim u'mishmar sadehu mipnei anavim? We're taught here, right, that if one has, let's say, the remains of figs, and one has also protecting any kind of produce also, okay, guarding his field, okay, because in this case of anavim, of grapes, sofe anavim umishmar sadehu mipnei makshaot, okay, that he may do that, he's guarding them, okay, because of cucumbers, umipnei madlaot, or because of gourds, right? Bisman shabal habayit makpid aleihem, so long as the householder is strict about them, particular about them, asurin mishum gezel, v'chayavin b'maser, they are forbidden, right? In this case, all right, one could be obligated on them, okay, if somebody steals them. And one is obligated also with regards to tithing them. Harim, mishum gezel, pturin mishum maaser. But we say maybe, okay, if they're not particular, just the opposite, right, that they would be exempt from, right, stealing, or exempt from tithing them. Amar Rava. And so Rava, however, says as follows: Gezerah shema yimatze glus ka'ayafa v'da'ate iluye. Okay, what happens, he says, if searching for the chametz, one finds a fine cake, a nice cake, and one's, so to speak, keeps it in mind. Okay? His intent is, maybe I'll still be hungry and want to eat it. V'chi mishkachat le, levat le. And if he seems to find this, right, what is he supposed to do? Nullify it, right? Okay, he's supposed to do that. Dilma mishkachat le, levatar isura, v'lav birshutei kaima. Maybe he's going to find it after the time frame for which it becomes forbidden to eat chametz. Okay? Or maybe he's going to find it and it's not in his legal possession. Velo matzeh mevatel. And the situation is therefore he's no longer able to nullify it. The Amar Rabbi Elazar, Shnei Dvarim einam birshuto shel Adam, that there are two things which are not considered in a possession, in a person's possession. Right? Va'asa'an hakatuv ki'ilu birshuto. But Scripture has made it such that it's legally in his possession. Ve'eluhain, and these are bor birshut harabim, if there is a pit dug in the public domain. Remember what happens? He's responsible if he dug the pit, even in the public domain, and has to cover it over, right? And the second, the chametz mishe sha'ot ulamala, and chametz, right, if it's above 6 hours. Okay. So the Gemara then raises the following question. V'nivtalei ba'arba, v'nivtalei b'chamesh. So let him nullify it in the 4th hour or the 5th hour of the day. This is, of course, on the 14th, as opposed to nullifying it the night before. Okay? Kevan delav zman isurahu. Because in the 4th or the 5th hour, he has no obligation of prohibition at that point still. V'lav zman biurahu. And it's not necessarily the time, okay, for the disposal. So the Gemara tells us, Dilma Pasha velo mivtale. Perhaps he will be make an error, all right, negligent, and he won't nullify it. We'll roll over just a little bit, right? Okay. V'nivtale b'shit. Okay. So let him nullify it at the beginning of the 6th hour. Right? Kevan de isura de rabbanan iluye kideoraita damya velav birshute kaima velo matze miftil. Okay? Since the 6th hour is, although it's rabbinic, the Isur falls on him already, and therefore, okay, it's like a biblical requirement. As a result, it's no longer in his possession, and therefore he's not able to nullify it. Okay, how do we know this? The Amar Rav Gidl Amar Rav Chia Bar Yosef Amar Rav. He says as follows, Hamikadesh, right? Yeah. Hamikadesh Mishe Sha'ot Ulamala Afilu Bechite, right? Kordanyata, one who attempts to become engaged with a woman using this produce from 6 hours up, in other words, on the 14th, even using this Kordinian wheat, okay? That's a special hardy wheat, okay? Right? Ein chosheshim l'kiddushin, we say. Right? What happens? We're not concerned about the betrothal. Ulebatar isura, okay? But after the time of the prohibition, lo matze mivtele, he's not able to nullify the chametz, v'hatanya. But aren't we taught in the Braita, haya yoshev b'veit hamidrash, v'nizkar sheyesh chametz b'toch beito, one who's sitting in the study hall and suddenly remembers that there's chametz in his house, okay? Mevatlo bilibo, he can nullify it in his heart. Okay? Echad Shabbat ve'echad Yom Tov. Whether it is Shabbat or whether it is on Yom Tov. And that's where we're going to stop today. Okay? So we'll wish everybody a good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
All right.
Shabbos,
Stay
Rabbi.
well.
Shabbos, everyone. Thank you very much.
Everybody take care.
Shabbos, Rabbi. Thank you.
Okay.
It's 20 after 11.
Okay, I'm coming right now.
You have to eat.
Yep.
And you're very low in orange juice.